Welcome to Awaken Daily Life. In our last episode, we asked why serious practitioners keep returning to the Āgamas Sutras. We saw that these early teachings were preserved carefully, trusted across generations, and valued because they still feel like living guidance. That raises the next practical question. If the Āgamas preserve a reliable map of practice, what do they actually mean by mindfulness?
Right, and that is such an important thing to ground ourselves in for you listening today. Because, I mean, we hear the word mindfulness just everywhere now, right?
Oh, absolutely, everywhere.
Yeah, it's, on tea bags, it's in corporate seminars, it's just this buzzword. But the early Buddhist tradition actually treats it so differently than we do today.
Yeah, totally. So, well, to really see that difference, I think we kind of need to start with our modern baseline, you know, like what we usually mean when we say it.
Right, the common idea.
Exactly. So if you ask most people today, they'll probably say mindfulness means being present, calming down, paying attention, and doing it all without judging anything.
Which honestly makes total sense for ordinary life.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, just think about a normal workday. You're sitting at your desk, your inbox is totally overflowing, your phone won't stop buzzing.
Yeah, the stress is just through the roof.
Right. So in that environment, just taking a deep breath and, trying to just be present, that's basically a survival tactic.
Yeah.
We kind of use it to just get through the afternoon without totally burning out.
No, I totally get why we use it that way. It's necessary. But it raises this kind of structural question, I think.
Okay. What do you mean?
Well, is this modern, stress reduction idea the full Buddhist meaning? Or is it sort of like looking at just the steering wheel and calling it the whole car?
Oh, I like that.
Because the early Buddhist tradition introduces a massive correction here. In those early teachings, mindfulness is not just present moment awareness.
Right.
It's fundamentally part of a path. It remembers, it observes, and it actively guides the mind. It's deeply tied to ethics, to concentration, wisdom, and, liberation.
Yeah, and that steering wheel analogy really works because it shows that the modern idea isn't necessarily wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incomplete. I mean, a steering wheel is totally essential, but you aren't going to get anywhere without an engine or a transmission or a map of where you're actually trying to go.
Right, it doesn't do much on its own.
Exactly. So in the early tradition, mindfulness isn't just this floating state of relaxation. It's a really active participant in how you live.
Yeah, and to understand how it actively guides the mind, we kind of have to look at what it's actually observing. Because the early texts don't just say, pay attention to everything all at once. They have this very specific structure.
4 foundations.
Exactly. Yeah. The 4 foundations of mindfulness. And in plain language, those are body, feeling, mind, and patterns of experience.
And we should probably clarify what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah.
Because Buddhist mindfulness is definitely not this vague, floating state where you just, blur your eyes and accept the universe.
Right. It's not spacing out.
No, not at all. It has a very specific field of practice. It's looking closely at exactly what is happening in your physical and mental space. You're not just generally aware. You're tracking the actual tension in your jaw or this specific painful tone of an emotion or noticing if your mind is contracted or distracted in that exact second.
Yeah, and I want to pause on that, on the mechanism of it, because I actually get tripped up on this sometimes.
Okay, how so?
Well, if I'm observing these foundations, body, feeling, mind, patterns, what's the distinct purpose of doing that? The early texts say it's actively meant to help reduce greed, anger, and confusion.
Right, moving toward freedom.
Yeah, moving toward freedom. But how does just noticing a tight jaw or a feeling actually reduce anger? Like mechanically?
Okay, so the mechanism is basically a circuit breaker.
A circuit breaker.
Yeah. Let's say you feel a flash of anger. Normally, your mind just instantly builds a whole story around it.
Oh, yeah, like, I can't believe they said that to me.
Exactly. Who wronged you, why you're right, what you should say back. And that story just feeds the anger, right? It creates this massive loop.
Totally.
But when you apply that surgical mindfulness we were talking about, you drop the story and you just observe the raw data. The physical and mental foundation.
So just the heat in the chest or whatever.
Right. You notice the heat, the tightness in your jaw, the unpleasant feeling. And by observing just the raw data, you decouple the physical sensation from the story.
Wow.
You start feeding it. You're literally watching how the suffering of anger is built in real time, which, well, it allows you to stop building it.
Okay, so the observation itself breaks the momentum.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But if the goal is actually moving toward freedom, if you're actively trying to reduce greed and anger, not just passively watch them, then the mind needs a way to stay on track. Because a circuit breaker only works if it's installed right. And that brings us to, I think, the crucial piece that's missing from most modern definitions.
Oh, yeah. This is really the turning point of the whole practice.
It really is. And that missing piece is recollection.
Right.
In fact, the original word for mindfulness in the early texts, sati, actually carries this meaning of memory or recollection. It's just totally central.
But we should definitely define what recollection means here so no one misunderstands it.
Yeah, good point.
Because it does not mean replaying the past.
Right.
It's not getting lost in nostalgia or sitting on your cushion telling yourself a story about what happened at work yesterday.
No, definitely not autobiographical memory.
Exactly.
What it actually means is simply not forgetting the practice. It's remembering the object of meditation, remembering the instructions, the ultimate purpose, and actively noticing if your mind has drifted away.
Yeah.
It's kind of like navigating a hike.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, so present moment awareness is like noticing the rocks and the roots right under your boots so you don't trip. But recollection is remembering that you're holding a map and checking if you've actually wandered off the trail.
That map analogy is so vital. It reminds me of, well, imagine you're taking a shower before work, right?
Oh.
And suddenly you are just having a full-blown imaginary argument with a coworker.
Oh, man, all the time.
Right. Physically, you're in the shower.
Yeah.
But mentally, you are in a conference room defending your life.
Totally.
Now, present moment awareness might eventually kick in and notice, oh, the water is hot. But it's recollection sati that actually clicks and says, wait, I'm caught in a story. I'm supposed to be present. I forgot the path.
Yeah.
It's the muscle that remembers to actually bring you back from that imaginary argument to reality.
That is such a relatable example. And, to see exactly how this active recollection works mechanically, we can actually look at a really specific physical practice.
Okay.
We can look at Master Dianwu's walking meditation. It's just a highly practical model for this.
Yeah, walking meditation is basically the perfect laboratory for this stuff.
It really is. Master Dianwu details 3 specific functions of mindfulness happening when you walk: present moment, direction, and recollection.
So step by step, it looks like this. First, you have to know the present step clearly. Feeling the lifting, moving, and placing of the foot.
The physical sensation.
Right. Second, you intentionally direct the mind to the next step.
So you aren't just waiting around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then third, and this is key, you recollect whether the mind actually stayed with the object or if it wandered off into a fantasy or got agitated.
Yeah, and when you look at the human dimension of that, you realize it's not just about walking slowly.
Right. It's not just a relaxation exercise.
No, it's this incredibly active, structured loop. It shows that true mindfulness requires continuity and intentionality. It's not just passive observation. It's constantly checking, did I stay here or did I drift?
And seeing it as this active directional training, it really highlights a stark contrast with how the word is used in popular culture today.
Oh, definitely.
Like, especially with the New Age interpretation.
Yeah. In New Age language, you hear things like living in the now, or trusting your flow, or raising your vibration.
Right.
But early Buddhist mindfulness is highly disciplined. It's far more concerned with investigating causes and conditions, like what specific conditions are producing this state of mind right now.
Right, which completely changes how we handle things.
Yeah.
Because if you feel, say, intense anger or jealousy, the New Age approach might say to just trust that flow and feel your feelings.
Yeah, validate it all.
Right. But early Buddhism treats it more like a diagnostic engine light on a dashboard.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it's asking you to investigate it. What caused this anger? What assumptions is it based on? Is following this feeling going to actually lead to more suffering or less suffering? It's just much more rigorous.
It is. And
Yeah.
then we also have to contrast it with secular therapeutic mindfulness.
Right, which we definitely need to be balanced about.
Oh, absolutely. Because secular therapeutic mindfulness has genuine, undeniable value.
Totally. It really does help with stress and chronic pain and anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, John Kabat-Zinn is a hugely important figure here. He brought mindfulness into public life, into clinics, specifically to alleviate stress and suffering. And for a lot of people, that is a literal lifeline.
Yeah, if you're dealing with severe anxiety, just learning to pause and not judge your experience is massive.
It is. But, and this is where it gets interesting, some modern critics, like Ronald Purser, have pointed out the downside of extracting it like that.
Right. The critique of corporate mindfulness.
Exactly. The argument is that when mindfulness is stripped of its original context, it's too often reduced to just a coping mechanism, or even worse, a performance tool for corporate productivity.
Yeah, like something you do on an app for 10 minutes so you can just get back to being a highly productive gear in a really stressful machine.
Right.
Without ever actually questioning the machine itself.
Exactly. And that's the limitation. When mindfulness is cut off from ethics and recollection and wisdom and liberation, it becomes much narrower than the Buddhist original. It stops asking, does this lead to bondage or freedom? And it just asks, am I calmer?
Wow. Yeah.
Which honestly is why dedicated students inevitably look backward to the early teachings. They realize that just being calm isn't enough if the direction you're heading is still causing harm.
Right. You need the whole car, not just the steering wheel.
Exactly. So that really answers the deeper question. Why do serious practitioners keep coming back to this older understanding? It's not about romanticizing the past. It's because the early teachings preserve something much fuller. They preserve mindfulness as training, not just a technique.
And we really need to bring that down into daily life for you listening, because this isn't just theory, right?
Right.
So what does this actually look like on, say, a random Tuesday?
Well, Buddhist mindfulness in an ordinary day means remembering to stay with what is happening, knowing it clearly, and relating to it in a way that leads to less greed, less hatred, less confusion, and more freedom.
Right. And to ground that in a human way, let's say you feel a sudden spike of irritation at a colleague, or a sudden wave of desire, or you just keep getting distracted and reacting way too quickly to your kids.
The everyday stuff.
Exactly. You get lost in a spiral of thought. Modern mindfulness might just say, notice it, take a breath, be present. But this older training utilizes recollection. You remember the practice. You clearly see the anger. You drop the story. And then you intentionally return to a wholesome state. You're intervening.
It's active.
Exactly. And the human meaning of that is just beautiful. It means this isn't about becoming impressive or, perfectly calm all the time.
Right. You don't have to be a robot.
Exactly. It's just about becoming more honest, less reactive, less self-deceived by your own stories, and ultimately just more capable of living with clarity and kindness.
That is so well said. And I think that wraps up exactly why Master Dianwu's emphasis makes so much sense. He kept returning to the Āgamas, not out of nostalgia, but because they preserve this fuller map. In that early sense, mindfulness isn't a modern trend. It's rigorous training.
Right. So rather than just being here now, it's more like remembering the path now.
Yes, exactly. If mindfulness in the Buddhist sense is not just awareness but training, then how is that training actually cultivated step by step in real life?